Good evening, dear friends. Wishing you a good start for a new week. Welcome Bilgehan.
Greetings, everyone.
You know, currently I am studying for my second college degree, this time sociology. And upon our discussion on time perceptions and merit in the previous weeks, I noticed how funny and hastily we act when we are late for something important. Last week, there were final exams, and one of my friends thought that exams will be 2 weeks later, and when she learned that exams will start next day, she sat down and tried to study everything at once. Most of humankind is just like her, because some human beings are unaware that the end of the world school is near. They are simply carefree or occupied with trivial things in regard to their development. Or some human beings are unaware of the fact how precious this current lifetime we have to finish some unfinished business from past lifetimes. Still, when we consider the events of life, pressures of the global and natural events, we hear the bells toll for all of us. And some human beings are trying hard to finish everything at once before the last bell tolls. But, let's be realistic. This cannot happen only by reading a book, attending a weekend workshop, watching videos and reels on social media. Even by reading this book we cannot complete the human stage. Our efforts should be multi-layered. We need to work on our emotions, beliefs, thought patterns, habits, dynamics from our past lifetimes we brought along to our present life. Within life, we need to be working actively. Only then, maybe we can advance an inch. But please do not underestimate that inch, because we cannot know the true needs of our beings in that level of our current awareness. We cannot know the true length of that inch from the perspective of our being. Yes, let's start reading. There are 3 main cadres in the universe, in accordance with the necessities which are filtrating from the unitary. 1. Cadre, plan and techniques of the beings in duty in the cadre of the original principle. 2. Cadres and techniques of the beings which are included in the cadre of mechanisms of destiny. 3. Plans and techniques of the beings which are included in the cadre of the mechanism of original time, and the issues providing their entire realities particular to themselves. So, there are innumerable organizations, connected to these 3 main cadres, which execute the necessities belonging to the evolutions of spirits in universe with all details, and the great organization systems which are made out of these organizations which are interconnected through hierarchical orders. All of these are made up of beings in duty on behalf of others or on their own account in accomplishing the uncountable deeds to be done in universe, starting from the initial stages of the plan of duty up to the unitary. And these beings in duty execute their duties within their organizations without even deviating a hair's breadth, under the principles and directives of the above-mentioned 3 main and coordinated cadres of duty which descend from the unitary. These duties are the innumerable deeds belonging to various realms. For example, there are duties executed by innumerable and interconnected organizations such as the time stations particular to the world, the stations managing the coarse kinetic motions, the stations managing the individual and the small communal evolutionary plans, and finally, the stations with ever-expanding scopes conducting and executing the general evolutionary leaps, plans and related matter transformations of the masses with wider scope. Among these duties are the deeds of a great organization which is from the sublime plan of duty and engaged in the great revolutionary activities of today's world, including as well the activities for putting this book into effect. So, in this way, the beings engaged in the universe deeds with ever-increasing scope take a stand proper to the merit of duty in accordance with duty, within a system organization and a principle of coordination and cooperation and an order of hierarchy. This procession, as it evolves in this way, continues within an order, sequence, and harmony onwards to the unitary where the evolution, that can be intuited by its expression in our universe, is realized.
Yes, this is one of the intensely profound passages, and clear knowledge is given about some topics. First of all, we read about 3 different cadres of beings in duty. And please be careful, the word beings should not confuse us. Actually, these are groups of beings. We had mentioned and discussed in our previous videos in this series that such groups with duty is considered as a single being. However, they are groups of beings. So, a cadre is made up of the collection of groups of beings in duty. I mean, these are beings in duty with high-level duties. And they are, first, the cadre of original principle, second, mechanisms of destiny, third, the cadre of original time. And we human beings, has reached here and now, by going through a certain education and training since the dawn of this last cycle of the world. Starting from our lifetimes as primitive cave humans, and by making lots of rights and wrongs, we educated and trained ourselves, widened our being's comprehensions and consequently, reflected this essence knowledge to our spirits. And the most important knowledge we could gain in the last 5,000 years of human history is the religions that teach the belief in monotheism. The books of monotheistic religions helped humankind to develop their inner world and sense of communal welfare. And of course, people made wars and atrocities, and still do, on behalf of the religions they followed, so we can say these teachings brought a new level of tests and trials, as well. Many of our dear friends ask us if this book is a religious book. No, it is not. But please understand that in this current level of humankind's comprehension, we don't need more religious books. Also, the Quran states that Islam is the last religion. Because of this, now, in this book, we read about the cadres of duty and the mechanisms they use, and what we read is not in conflict what was given in those books of monotheistic religions. What is called as archangels are actually these cadres of duty. Now, we read the divine order and the universe, and learn about those concepts that are defined openly, without shrouding them with heavy symbolism and the need of keeping with the general level of comprehensions of those olden times. And, again, we read in this book about the last cycle of our world and the physical catastrophes that will come. And again, these are not mere prophecies but very probable outcomes of the current choices and decisions of humankind about our communal welfare, be it physical as climate crisis, environmental pollution, or conscientious like inequalities and human rights. And Mr. Ruhselman stated in his will that, this book must be translated into many languages, and Bilyay Foundation works hard to make this book available in many languages. English and German editions are already published. French and Spanish editions are under translation. After all, the plan that gave these spiritual communiques to the medium through the questions of Mr. Ruhselman, has a duty, which is to explain this profound knowledge about spirit and humanity at a level today's human beings can understand. Because of this, I frequently say that please don't consider what we understand from this book is the literal state of the higher plans. No, the narrative of this book is only for our current level of understanding. We can only understand the knowledge given in this book in relation to the data in our hands. Yes, let me go back to the beginning of this passage. These cadres of duty are the process of the infinite evolution of the spirits. I mean, these cadres are in the flux, as they evolve in the plan of duty, they also take a role in the evolution of spirits. A process, a phase of the evolution. After all, even the slightest motion in the universe is because of the needs of the spirits. Hence, these cadres are also the evolutionary processes of the spirits. These are not cadres established for the benefit of human beings. And because these cadres are phases, processes of the spirit's evolution, then it means that, if our being is currently individual, as our comprehension gets wider and wider, and our being becomes of that harmony more and more, at some point, after the completion of Plan of Love, our being will come together with other supposedly individual beings that are at similar levels of development or that resonate with each other, and as such groupings evolve into larger organizations of duty, eventually our individuality will vanish and we will be merged into ever larger organizations and into such cadres of duty. This will not happen automatically but by efforts and super efforts we make as human beings, so our being's development and our spirit's evolution can progress properly. This will happen by gaining merits for such phases, such stages of assuming duties in the plan of duty. And of course, this also means that the beings that are not yet in the human stage will continue their development, and eventually they will reach human stage and eventually, the superhuman stage. Yes, let's not limit those cadres with 3, they mean such great unity of comprehensions that it is now unimaginable for us human beings in this world. And it is all about widening of comprehensions, widening and uniting. Please try to grasp the imaginative meaning behind all those descriptions. This is not a physical or 3D widening, like some cloud taking more and more space. What we talk about is rather, an ongoing adaptation to that harmony of divine order, an ongoing adaptation for behaving in accordance with the spherical spacetime. Therefore, we talk about an ongoing process of unification of the groups of beings, starting from smallest to greatest, or from the perspective of comprehensions, from least wide to widest. And, again, as I mentioned last week, let's stop thinking with the three-dimensional concepts such as above, below, left, right, front, back, etc. We need to try our best in living our life as though it is an ongoing meditation. We try to do this, and I am sure you also do try, and more we can become able to do this, more we can sense the traces of the higher plans, more we can receive their vibrations by our brains, our whole organisms.
I'd like to remind our dear friends that during month of April, in the videos we made with Bülent Cantor, we had discussed the paragraphs we read and shared many figures and graphics, and the advance of these cadres of duty in the original time was described as the ever-widening spheres. If you can watch those videos, they can refresh their memory, and can gain new insights about this widening of comprehension you mentioned.
A word strikes my attention in this passage, in the third paragraph, explaining the duties executed by interconnected organizations in the plan of duty. Let me find and read. The stations managing the coarse kinetic motions. I understand this word not only meaning the physical periodical movements of our planet, or on and in our planet, but also meaning as giving a general direction to mass communal movements, let's say as migrations we lately witness in our world. As though, the masses are preparing for harsher times when the natural disaster will force human populations to become displaced in great distances on Earth. And humanity will learn the necessary lesson that must be learnt before this world cycle ends, so they can decrease their interaction with the hydrogen cosmos, and there are stations and cadres of duty that govern and calculate all possible progress and results of such mass movements by utilizing the vast vantage point the spherical spacetime provides them with.
Yes, we are preparing for those days to come. Last month, as we read and discussed the time comprehensions, we had learnt about the mechanism of destiny. If you remember, influences from the original principle, after filtered through the unitary and entered the universe, the mechanism of destiny were binding time forms with matter milieux to create space, which is the any localized point a comprehension is focused on, and utilized by the cadre of beings in duty for the manifesting all destined results of the beings in accordance with the needs of the spirits. And this can be done by utilizing the almost infinite possibilities the spherical time perception provides the beings in duty with. And here, we read about the greater organizations that encompass what we read about previously, much closer to the original time perception, a kind of top-level organizations of duty. And we talk about such vast and immense organizations that none of the needs of the beings contradict each other. Each need of the beings is interorganized. The closest to home example of such an immense processing is an individual human being. A couple have sex and woman gets pregnant, the location, the conditions, timing of the conception and the moment of birth of the baby. And now imagine all other destinies of other persons that are members of the families of the mother and father, their relationships to each other and with the newborn, the ancestral influences carried by the genes of the mother and father, the other persons that will play small and big roles in the development of the child into an adult. Just try to imagine those waves created by this pebble of a conception in the vast ocean of existence, and also all those waves that necessitate the conception of a baby, a new incarnation. And, again, please try to imagine for all those human beings involved, their needs that are outlined in their individual life plans, timings of the cyclical periods of those needed events in their life, bringing out the necessary events that will meet those needs. and such fine details does not deviate from the destined process. Therefore, when we talk about the end of this world cycle and the disasters and catastrophes it will entail, please do not think those as punishments. Even the most harrowing events we encounter in our personal life are still governed by those beings in duty at those cadres. And because they have the vantage point of the spherical time where all those 500 to 700 lifetimes of a single human being can be seen as simultaneously happen at a single moment. And because they can observe what we call past, present, and future as a single moment, they have all the knowledge about each choice we made, make, and will make, and consequently, the destiny we bring out and refresh at every moment. And if you notice, we still talk about the individual plans, and as we had discussed in our previous videos, individual plans don't have much meaning unless they are parts of communal plans. And please try to widen the circle to include not only the human population on our planet, but all other beings, living and disembodied, as well. Imagine the scope of such communal plans that are governed by those cadres. Other planets, our solar system, our galaxy, the Milky Way, and all other innumerable galaxies our space telescopes discover almost every day. And still, we are talking about the hydrogen cosmos. Yes, in short, events, situations, conditions, states, everything that happens within us and everything that happens to us occurs by the workings of the cadres of beings in duty that we can name as mechanism of destiny. Here and now, we are a group of human beings, and there is a continuous flux of influences arriving at us and we exchange among us. As we talk about these topics, as you read or watch this video and sending your questions and comments to us, all of us are under the influences of that plan. These cadres are always at work. And the plan that has given these spiritual communiques during the sessions conducted by Mr. Ruhselman tells us about this book that it is neither ours nor yours as mankind nor anybody else. It is a gift of the divine order given to mankind. That is, it is a part of nature. And this plan, or cadre of duty, names itself as the Voyagers of Destiny. Would you like to add something before we continue reading?
Yes, I'd like to remind our dear friends that, if they read the Quran, they must have noticed that there are 3 pronouns used throughout the whole book. But I'd like to elaborate on the pronoun we. Just like we read in this verse in the Surah Kaf. We are closer to them than their jugular vein. I think, the verses and surahs when this pronoun used, these are all about those cadres of beings in duty, at the highest levels of the plan of duty.
Yes, let's continue reading. We have stated that organization systems are established starting with the plan of duty. Similarly, we have said that the initial organization has started at the initial stages of the plan of duty. Now, it is necessary to give the necessary knowledge about the initial establishment of the organizations. Previously, it has been mentioned that mankind, having completed their time in the world, cannot directly pass to the plan of duty and will remain in a semi-subtle realm for a while. For, before mankind passes to the plan of duty, they need to regulate some aspects of their life which they cannot yet complete in the world in accordance with the necessities of the world, which are, for example, the current circumstances of the world, and it is only possible for them to live for a while in this semi-subtle realm. As to the semi-subtle realm, there, all of the world realities and conditions have ended, but the new states of that place are preparatory to the duty and complementary for the deficient sides of mankind. And this deficient side is the true aspect of love that will manifest there, which mankind intuited but could not recognize while in the world. That place is a plan of love. In this plan, the comprehension of duty in the plan of duty has not yet begun, but within the applications and obligations of the love in there, in qualities unknown by mankind, there are components which gradually constitute the merits of comprehension of duty. Of course, these preparations in there are subject to perceptual time technique which is beyond simple time comprehension. So, after the beings who have passed into the semi-subtle spend some time in there and did sufficient preparations, they gradually start, in groups of 3 or 5, to do initial preparations belonging to the necessities of the plan of duty. The only point which can be intuited by mankind about the communications in these groupings is the concept that love has various variations which shift towards the duty. However, mankind can understand neither this love nor its variations in the true sense. So, these beings who render the last preparations of entering the plan of duty with their small constituted groups, during their applications pass to the initial stages of the plan of duty by shifting with a silent, undetected, and extremely sweet flow, and they are immediately assigned with deeds belonging to the initial stages of the plan of duty. They now become the beings in duty in carrying out the plan of duty, working as individuals while preserving their small group in there because of the mechanism of adaptation which we explained above in detail. Since, in there are no transitions such as death and rebirth, unlike in the world, this transition occurs, as we have said, as an awakening and with very sweet impressions. In the semi-subtle realm, there is no death. For, the subtlety of matter in there does not entail such intense transitions. These states are only imperatives which are valid in the coarse matter cosmos belonging to our world.
I'll start from the end of the passage. Let me read that sentence again. These states are only imperatives which are valid in the coarse matter cosmos belonging to our world. Of course, here in this passage, we read the certain conditions of the phase of death. That is, because the physical body's drag decreases during dying process, and eventually vanishes after death, we are much closer to the proximity of our being in regard to the level of comprehension, to the degree we appreciate that past life and its lessons. I don't say that this getting closer makes us closer to that semi-subtle realm of the plan of love, or to the higher levels towards the plan of duty. No, of course I don't mean such thing. I talk about the Spechium period, because it contains this important transition from this coarse matter level we now live in, towards rather liminal state between the crude and subtler levels of our existence. It does not mean that we go to another realm, as our previous terms like next world, afterlife, hereafter, the beyond, etc. imply. Because of this, we now try to use only Spechium to mean that isolated state our being withdraws into after the death of each body it builds in the hydrogen cosmos. In a sense, Spechium is also here but after we die as we go nearer to our being in the perceptual sense, as our worldly consciousness wanes and the effect of our being's influences waxes, we can become more in harmony with our being. If you remember, the being is built out of higher than semi-subtle energies, its structure has traces of the possibilities of the spherical time. Because of this perceptual proximity, we can begin to utilize some lesser versions of that spacetime by which we can review and analyze and evaluate all those emotional and mental imagery we stored in the unconscious in a very fast way. Again, let me repeat that after death we are not going someplace else, no, we simply are pulled towards to our being. That is why, this book, The Divine Order and the Universe states that Spechium is not a separate place, it is still in the hydrogen cosmos, it is actually the being itself. And, in this passage, we read about the beings who have made sufficient preparations in the plan of love, and how they gradually start, in groups of 3 or 5, to make initial preparations for harmonizing with the plan of duty. And during this transition from plan of love to plan of duty, the beings already begin to make groups of 3 or 5. I mean, this unity already begins, and even though the crudest form of the unity at the higher levels of the plan of duty, it is still beyond our wildest imagination. And these small groups begin to assume, to shoulder, to take duties. One of these initial duties is to become guardian being of a living human being. It is our habit to describe this guiding being as if it is a single being. Actually, they are a group of beings that reach the level and gain the merit of assuming such duties, and because they have a unity, they behave like an individual.
Yes, and in the entire book, these guiding beings are not mentioned as a single being, after all. It is always beings in duty, beings with duty.
Yes, you are right. And each time I read this plural usage, I get an impression of unity. And as you know, the widening of comprehensions are described as the unification of such duty groups as their merit increase and their group comprehensions widen. Yes, this is a state at a very high level for us, yet it is still a crude example of unity in regard the higher levels of Plan of Duty. Mostly, readers understand this unity in worldly terms, like, people love each other and come together to work and live in solidarity, but this is way beyond such human concepts. Because, for the love of duty to emerge, first the beings have to go through the applications of true love in the plan of love. And as I understand from the descriptions of this semi-subtle realm, we will learn the power of forsaking or power of leaving, releasing the true love gives us. Because only by forsaking the crude vibrations, frequencies of the sensuality, of the earthly cravings entirely, we can become attracted to the love of duty. And this means that our being does not have any need to build bodies anymore, be it in the crude or semi-subtle forms of the hydrogen cosmos. Then, our being can unite with other beings without anything tying it down to the coarse matter combinations.
In the previous pages, we had read the definition of love as an attraction felt towards anything. The polling you mentioned also has this meaning. The beings that are adapted to each other attract each other and make up those groups of duty. And those groups that are adapted to each other attract each other to make up ever larger groups, organizations, and cadres toward the unitary. The same mechanism of attraction is utilized. In our world, we think that attraction can only be between a man and a woman. Or we define our attractions as love. I don't love people, I love animals. Some people are attracted to nature, some people are attracted to helping others, etc. These are only small rehearsals for the attraction we talk about, because we frequently observe that when the interaction between people and the object of their attraction stops, so-called love ends. The reason is that our love is not unconditional. We become attracted to things and others to fulfill our certain desires and wants. Our love is always conditional. Even the feelings of people that say that they felt unconditional love when they become parents may change in time. Greatest love can quickly turn into hate in our world. However, the matter of the semi-subtle realm and the applications of love that we cannot even imagine right now will gradually prepare us to the true adaptation and attraction to each other as we get nearer to the plan of duty. Just imagine, right now, we are almost 80 persons working together around a topic. And try to imagine that all of us deeply and openly understand what is meant during our discussions without adding misinterpretations, without negation, etc. Within such a state, judgments or conflicts cannot happen. Yet, even the greatest examples of unity the humankind display has all kinds of oppositions, conflicts, disagreements, separations. So, yes, that kind of unity, in its purest sense, cannot happen in this world. Hence, I think, instead of expecting a golden age of peace on earth, it is much better to work on our own inner conflicts, disagreements, separations in order to advance the development of our own beings, by widening our comprehensions, and by leaving our automatic behaviors.
Your words remind me the slogan of the Three Musketeers. One for all for one. Maybe we can change it a little. All for one for unitary.
One for all and all for one unitary?
Better. Of course, for the Three Musketeers, this slogan implies something sensual, egoistical, even though it is about a group. One for something, and something is for another thing. Still, this is a level of love. Conditional love. There is self-interest. However, in another level, this can be unity without expectation, without a for condition. But again, it is not possible now. Only after that semi-subtle realm we can have such a comprehension. Still, until we reach those higher levels of unity, we go through all possible levels of love in the world. Sometimes by brandishing swords, sometimes by founding a spiritual research society, sometimes by doing good deeds, sometimes by fighting for the freedom of your country, sometimes by sacrificing your own life to save someone else for a higher purpose. There are so many ways of loving. And the cadres of duty know the power of love very well, and utilize the myriad possibilities of attractions in the world for human beings to be pulled this or that way in order to gain experiences from both ends of their conscience mechanism, so these impressions can advance the development of their beings. And consequently, their spirits evolve.
I think we have some time left for replying a few questions. A dear friend asks, with all my power and effort, I am doing my best to understand the divine system, yet for the last 7 years, I have been tested and trialed by a narcissistic loved one, and this is harder to understand the whole universe. Although I think that I am widening my comprehension, I wonder why I cannot change this situation, while my body cells change every 7 years. The answer is in this phrase, I think that I am widening my comprehension. Because we easily assume this. However, we are mostly in automatic, and at best, more or less comprehending states. And as we always try to emphasize, each event we encounter, especially within our close relationships, there is multiple dynamics we need to study and be aware of. And yes, our cells change and renew, seasons change, and of course we human beings change, but it is a part of the motion and movement of matter combinations. It does not necessarily mean that we get more comprehending. Widening our comprehension contains other actions like noticing, like detecting the changes in the meanings we add to things and people, like applying the things you notice in your life, like widening the scope of meanings, like developing attitudes in the direction of change, etc. I mean, this requires our intentional efforts and hard work in a certain direction and with a certain aim. And this example of body cells changing is only pointing us the potential for change within us. Therefore, please understand that widening our comprehension is a process, an ongoing process that requires our conscious involvement. And there are myriad ways and methods available to humanity now.
And I can suggest that please don't follow the ways you use in general. Choose another way, another path. Don't think in the way you think generally. Don't do as you generally do. In time, the automatism within your organism begins to loosen. Yes, you will feel worse at first, but later, you will see that the answers of your questions begin to appear in your daily life. The rule is to give up your habitual ways. This is the power of leaving, of releasing. Yes, I can even say that this is the true love's power of releasing.
Another question. In the spatium, during a near-death experience, I have been told that I have a duty but I don't remember it anymore. What should I do? Well, becoming a being with a duty, as we read in this book, does not happen in this way you described. Because what we mean by the beings in duty are the beings that have completed the world school, and also by completing the following semi-subtle realm of the plan of love, had merit of making groups of duty after reaching the initial steps of the plan of duty. What you mean must be your purpose in your life, or more correctly, the tasks you promised to fulfill while preparing your current life plan. It may be that you had to hear it again, and you encountered and experienced this near-death event. You will find it within your personal life. You may think that what you can do within your personal life is nothing important, but you cannot really know how far the influences of your little acts can reach in other people's life. And indeed, each of us has a common task as human beings, as the vehicles of our being that outline this lifetime we live, increasing our capacity of conscience. And to do this, we must be less automatic and more comprehending, more aware, more conscious about the cause and effect chains behind our thinking, actions, and choices in life. We must be perceptive to get the lessons life events bring before us. And this is in the small details of our relations with our loved ones, our family, our coworkers, our community. And if you need a shortcut, I say that be aware of the repeating events in your life, just check their quality, the lessons they bring. And please actively work on yourself, your dreams, your intuitions. Another question, this time with a metaphor. If a rose thorn pricks my finger, is the rose guilty? Or I was a thorn at the planned stage of my development and my thorn pricked the finger of a human being back then? Or am I the only guilty one because I am careless around the rows?
Well, honestly, things do not progress in such a linear manner. They don't progress as an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. No. First of all, there is no wrong in a thorn's pricking a human's finger. However, from the perspective of experiences and material development, it brings a lesson, and we learn that we cannot utilize something or any matter combination without learning its nature. And this is such an important knowledge. Actually, the most important knowledge we can learn in this world. For example, traffic accidents. In general, traffic accidents happen because we, as drivers and/or pedestrians, cannot properly grasp the physical or spatial laws of the space. We don't know what inertia is, we don't know when and where an automobile at a certain speed can stop when the brake pedal is activated. I had observed the most impressive examples of this in Africa. I was seeing lots of vehicles rolled or tipped over on their side or on their roofs. They were not crashed but rolled over after going around a curve in the road. I asked and they explained that they left the vehicles like these because our drivers cannot decrease their speed around the curves. They simply turn around with the same speed and then, their vehicles get out of the road. It was obvious, the local drivers couldn't adapt the new conditions those new roads introduced to their daily life. So, is the construction company guilty of building better roads for the local drivers? No. The fact is, those local drivers did not yet gain the merit of fulfilling the requirements of those new physical conditions. Therefore, this is a lesson that has to be learnt. It may not be crude as driving a car in the traffic, or it may be fine as a small thorn pricking our finger. On both examples, we human beings have to adapt our comprehension to the necessity the event or the thorn brings to us.
Yes, I'd like to remind our dear friends that there is no sentence in the divine order and the universe mentioning wrongdoings and punishments. When we are not aware or conscious of the cause and effect chains our previous choices and actions bring in front of us, so we can deal their consequences and learn from these to make better choices and actions. Then, we tend to interpret those consequences as punishments because of our emotional states, beliefs, thought patterns, and prejudices. Harsh events don't happen to us because we are guilty of unspeakable deeds. They happen because we need to learn to do what is necessary to do during life events. Yes, dear friends. Thank you so much for your attendance, comments, and questions. Together we study and learn more and more. Hoping to see you next week.
Thank you, dear friends. This was a beneficial study. Good evening.